I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
All right. You are in Las Vegas for Formula One.
For the Grand Prix, it's the year 2 of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and it's quite cold. So if you're coming, bring your coats and your hats and your gloves.
But as such, we have a special interview with an actual race car driver.
Yeah, we have Alexander Rossi, who is phenomenal. He, of course, has driven 9 seasons in IndyCar. He won the Indy 500 in 2016. He had 5 starts in F1 and was the first, I think he was the youngest guy to win the Indy 500 since 1928. I mean, he's very accomplished. He's also got a podcast about racing that's pretty good. And yeah, he's fascinating. So I get the real scoop from him on the insider level of F1 Vegas and racing and all of that.
Yeah, I will say his podcast is phenomenal. As a guy who listens to podcasts all the time, I can say that. Also, I want to point out you did that yourself, because I'm like working double duty around here and on my day job.
Daddy has 2 jobs.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm looking forward to that. But before we get to that, we have to talk about the most ridiculous thing that I have ever seen in my entire life in the auto industry. And
is it really?
I can't think. I've been racking my brain to think of any bigger marketing fiasco, and I can't.
I know.
Jaguar
I'm dumbfounded.
has like what? I don't even understand what it is. Jaguar has ended current production of their vehicles, and they're now rebranding, or at least they're rebranding the company, and it's so wrong.
Yeah. So, okay. We knew that Jaguar is not making any new cars. We know that they had said in 2021, they're only going to make EVs. They're like not even making money on any of the cars that they're currently selling. They're not developing any new ones, like I said. And so, yes. So on the 19th, earlier this week, they announced what is going to be their rebrand, which is supposed to be this launch of them as a completely new brand and company into the future. I'm stuttering. It was so far off of anything that Jaguar meant or had stood for or represented to people in all of the past years of its history. I'm sure by now all of our readers have seen this. They deleted everything on their Instagram account. They've put up 2 new posts.
Now 3. There's a third one now. I've just pulled it up. Yeah.
A video that basically looks like a Kohl's ad, or sort of, something from 2007, maybe.
It has nothing to do with cars. It was compared to Teletubbies. It's people. It's along the lines of BMW's XM marketing campaign. Remember that?
Yeah.
But somehow far worse.
It's getting a lot of blowback for being woke, but just like performatively and patronizingly woke. So there's that. You should, if you're listening and you haven't, please go watch it and comment along with the 26,000 other people who have commented on it. Then the next picture they put up on Instagram was like a rear shot of this concept car that they're going to announce in Miami on December 2nd. And that photo has been likened to an air conditioner, looking like an air conditioner, basically. So it just feels to
Could be
me,
a printer, I'm thinking. Maybe a
printer, yes. It certainly seems like this is a case of when marketing is so far off of reality and what the grassroots world of people who buy cars wants. It's really shocking and honestly kind of sad. Now, there are some who have suggested, hey, Jaguar wasn't doing great anyway. They really need to just burn everything to the ground. And this is how you have a proper relaunch. You just destroy everything and then start again. But, I would just say the only thing that you can't buy is time and heritage. You build heritage over time, and they've completely destroyed the one asset that they can't actually buy or make. You either have it or you don't. So I do not have high hopes for whatever this concept that we're going to be shown is in December. Oh, and another thing, their logo. Now, Matt, you mentioned earlier that you can be very pedantic when it comes to certain things. And this logo, they've gotten rid of the leaper, the Jag, the leaping Jag. They have come up with some sort of like very softly sans serif type under lowercase Jaguar, but the G and the U are capital. So it's basically like a capital GU in the middle of the word Jaguar.
Yeah. I think so. The leaper. So in the new Instagram post, and I would just say to those people listening who haven't seen it, you must go on Instagram and look at their first marketing clip, and then keep in mind that they very likely paid someone to do this campaign for them. So they have paid money for something. You just won't believe it. How bad it is. I don't know if they paid
enough, to be honest. Whatever they paid, it wasn't enough.
I will say in the third post, they've got what looks like around the bottom of the door, I'm going to say by the front wheel well, sort of a shot of, I guess, what must be the concept car. And they do have the leaper back on.
Oh, they do? Oh,
on a panel that I guess a panel sort of opens up and a camera comes out.
Oh boy.
I don't know. The only thing I can say is you have to see it for yourself. They have 17 million followers on Instagram, so a lot of people have seen it, and I think you're not far off. Yeah, 31,000 comments about how bad it is.
I mean, look, if the full goal of marketing is to get people to talk about your brand, they've really hit it out of the park, because this is everywhere. People are writing about it. I actually knew the rebrand was coming, but chose not to cover it because it's just they didn't even have a car to show. Our plan is to cover the car when it comes out in December in a few weeks. But this is just beyond surprising. To me, it feels panicky, and I understand that right now in the automotive market, it feels like a lot of brands are panicking because there's a sort of schizophrenia where they don't know if they should hold on to the combustion side of things or just make this huge leap into the new EV world. And it seems like Jaguar has decided they're going to make this huge leap, no pun intended with the leaper, into the new EV world. And they really are betting it all. And it's kind of breathtaking, but I don't know if it's in a good way.
Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing. The other thing I want to talk about is you have a piece out, or your column on the new Panamera or a new hybrid version. Yeah. And I wonder, first of all, what role the Panamera plays now in the Porsche model offering, because they do have the Taycan if you're looking for a four-door, albeit electric, right? And everybody otherwise is buying SUVs, so Macan and Cayenne. Are there really a lot of sales still of the Panamera?
Honestly, they're pretty low and they're down. And I really think when the Taycan debuted in 2019, it really, like, all of the assets and resources that were used, that had been used on the Panamera promotion and sales and everything, it felt like it was all switched to Taycan, because of course this was the future. This was the electric vehicle that we all wanted and needed. And it really, really did feel like Panamera was going away, that this, they weren't going to renew it. But now it's so interesting because Taycan aftermarket values are really getting slaughtered right now. EV sales obviously are down in general, especially in China. And I'm not making any great statement about whether, I think Panamera sales are going up or not going up. I'm just saying that for this particular hybrid car, it was fabulous. It's also very expensive, but it was like, even I had kind of forgotten about the Panamera and just assumed it would be let go. But I don't know. I had forgotten how great a car it is. And I'm not even necessarily a sedan type of person. But it was really great.
Yeah, you have a couple sedans.
True. Very true. Lest we forget.
Yeah, no, I was starting to forget about it as well. I don't think about the Panamera very much. I see some more aged Panameras on the road, but this new one looks very nice. Especially, I guess yours is the gray one that I'm looking at in your piece. And
gray's nice. Some people might call it purple.
But $250,000.
I know. Well, this goes back to our earlier conversation about how expensive the Mercedes sedan was. Like it's some of these like executive style sedans. I'm still surprised, and yes, I did read the email calling me a snob and saying, I could never afford these anyway, so I don't get to comment on them.
That wasn't very nice. I didn't think that was very nice.
It's okay. It's honestly, my thought is it's hardly the worst thing I've been called. And it's neither the first nor the last time I've been called a snob. So if having high standards earns me that badge, that is a label I'm proud to wear. But all that said, it's expensive. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
You get a lot for it, but it's so expensive.
I mean, everything's expensive, but that just seems exorbitant. $250,000, whatever. I guess as I age, it's hard for me to keep up with prices and understand them. I was driving this week a truck, and it'll be maybe a boring thing to talk about for people listening to this podcast because it's just an electric truck. It was the GMC Sierra Denali EV. It's their sort of luxurious version of the Sierra truck. I absolutely loved it. I have to say, I loved the driving experience because it has, so much power and instant torque as all, EVs do. I loved the functionality of it. The frunk is very useful on a pickup truck, especially because if you put stuff in a pickup bed, it slides all over the place. So it's nice to have a smaller, more compact storage space. But the pickup bed is innovative. It's got like the Bollinger had, and I think maybe a Rivian has this too, a pass-through. So you can put down the middle of the pickup truck and put, if you're carrying 11-foot 2x4s, you've got space for it. I don't often carry 11-foot 2x4s, but it's cool.
But you could if you wanted.
Yes. And it's also like a pickup truck these days is such a great family car. It's very roomy.
I don't think it's crazy for you to think that. Like, I know we talked about that last week. Makes sense to me. I mean, I don't have kids, but
yeah. I mean, I have enough room for the kids the car seats are such a pain to put in the vehicle. There's not a problem in this vehicle. Plus, I can put stuff in the bed or the frunk if I need to. And I normally I don't like giant screens. This thing has probably the biggest screen I've ever seen myself in a car that I've been in. But it's so functional. I mean, I don't even miss physical buttons. Like, I think the General Motors has the infotainment system down so well. I would put it up against a Mercedes-Benz system any day, and I think it works fantastically. And by the way, this is the first time I've gotten in a vehicle in the last few years that doesn't have CarPlay, not just doesn't have a wireless connection to CarPlay, but doesn't have Apple CarPlay at all. And I do not miss it.
Yeah. I don't think I would either, to be honest.
Don't miss it.
I mean, I don't think I would miss it.
It's all.
What's the price of that truck?
So that's why I brought it up. It's $100,000 as I tested it.
Oh.
So for that's to me that's very expensive. And as a pickup truck, I think also you could get a Raptor R with the big V8 for $100,000. But
have that.
I guess prices are just getting higher. And okay, this is the first edition. They call it Edition 1. And it is the Denali, which is kind of ridiculous. Like, it has 24-inch wheels. And
wow.
I mean, I guess that looks cool, but I want 18-inch wheels, on a truck.
Taking it back.
I want tire wall. Cool. I want, absorption, but of the bumps, and it rattles. And the one big complaint I have is that it rattles and squeaks on the inside because the headliner isn't perfectly attached. I think maybe that's because this is like one of the first ones and it's a press vehicle, but I've noticed that in a lot of big EV trucks, you hear so much of the interior noise.
This is my problem with a lot of EVs, and it gets me, really attacked online for saying it, but they're not well made. And I am not, nobody paying $100,000 should be faced with a product that isn't well made. You don't get a pass just because you're out there saving the world, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope that this is a one-off issue with this specific vehicle.
Yeah, maybe it is.
And I love it as a family car. And this is the first time I can really imagine maybe buying an EV for us.
Cool. Wow.
And
have you charged it yet?
Okay, so that's the other thing. It's got like a 200 kilowatt hour battery, and so I don't charge it at home because my wife won't let me in the garage. She owns the garage now, and so I have this. I park at work here, and I'm here 8 to 12 hours a day, and I have them plug it in. But they just plug it in like to the normal plug,
like a toaster.
It took 2 full work days, and I'm working double shifts here. So it took 2 days of like 10 hours a day to charge it from, I got it down to like 25% back up to 90.
This is the struggle. And I'm in Vegas right now, and it's front of mind because I drove from Los Angeles to Vegas. That's a 3.5 to 4 hour drive, and you really can't make it in one charge. So say you were going to drive this truck from LA to Vegas, which should be a 3.5 hour drive. Are you going to spend 2 nights while you charge the truck?
I mean,
it's silly.
It would be a problem with another electric car. I think because this one is the Denali and it's the Edition 1 and it's the biggest and best that they make. It's like, I think they call it the Max battery pack or whatever. It has 460 miles of range. So it's massively rangy.
So that would make it to Vegas in theory, under perfect driving conditions.
No, I would have it on my pedal on the floor the whole time because it's so fat. And by the way, it's so big and heavy that it's scary that it goes that fast. Like when you really mash it, it's kind of hard to keep the wheels straight. That
Infiniti QX80 that we both had felt so slow. And it's because we're in similarly sized EVs, like the Cybertruck, the Hummer, this thing. They are so crazy fast that when you get into something the exact same size with a combustion engine, it just feels so bad.
Yeah, for sure. But did you like the Infiniti QX80?
No, I found it to be extremely performative in its luxury.
Yeah.
And you can read all about it in my review. But I had a hard time finding, really great aspects about it, to be honest.
I just like how big and powerful it looks.
Powerful.
It looks powerful. Okay. It's got a 3.5 liter V6. It's like, give me a break.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It felt so underpowered to me driving it.
No, it is. It is. I think Infiniti really needs to do something about that ASAP, but I'm sure they won't. All right, let's focus in on power and speed and racing.
Yes.
Since you are in Las Vegas at the Grand Prix, and listen in to your interview with IndyCar driver Alex Rossi.
Alex, I'm just going to start this by reading a light listing of your accomplishments. I need you to tell me if I get anything wrong, but we're just going to hit the high notes. We're not going to include all of your BMW world domination. Right. But I really want people to understand, this long career that you've had. You are an American racing driver. You've spent, I think it's 9 seasons in the IndyCar series with 30 career podium finishes, including 8 victories. Correct me if I'm wrong. When you were 17, you moved to Europe. to pursue dreams of Formula One, and at the time were the youngest driver to hold an F1 super license. You made 5 F1 Grand Prix starts for Manor Racing, joining the very limited list of Americans who have ever started an F1 race. And then, of course, in 2016, what we all know and love about you is that you won the 100th running of the Indy 500. And I think you were the first American rookie to win that race since something like 1928. Is that sounding correct?
Nailed it. Yeah,
Okay,
you're doing
good.
great so far.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. More recently, it's been announced that you will be competing next year in the IndyCar series for Ed Carpenter's operation, and will be driving the number 21 Chevrolet, co-driving with Christian Rasmussen. And you also co-host a great podcast on SiriusXM called Off Track with Hinch and Rossi. That's with your BFF, James Hinchcliffe. I have to admit, I was listening to a few episodes in preparation for this conversation. And the most stunning thing you said was that when you recently officiated a wedding in Kentucky, in the hours leading up to the wedding, that was the most nervous you have ever been. Now,
Yeah, that is true.
Okay, so in light of all of these racing victories, let's talk about those nerves, because I was so surprised to hear that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for doing the research. That's very kind. Sometimes I talk to people and they're like, "Oh, so what is it that you do again?" It's like, "Okay,
Oh,
cool."
God.
But no. I mean, I've been racing since I was 10, so I feel like as much as this is it's an amazing job and it's an amazing career and it's an amazing thing that I get to do kind of 6 months out of the year in terms of driving race cars, it becomes a job. You know, it's a very performance and results driven sport. And you're really not guaranteed anything. So there's a lot of stress and pressures that go along with that. But ultimately at the end of the day, it's just it's a career, right? Whereas
Done for
for me,
years and years.
right, for me, officiating someone's wedding for the first time, I don't know, like I felt a lot of obligation and responsibility considering like it's going to be in their wedding video for the rest of their life. And they wanted it to be like a little comical, which I'm not necessarily known
Gosh.
for comedy. And they wanted some like traditional elements in it as well. So I spent a lot of time, like I'm probably 4 months in terms of like outlining it and thinking
Wow.
about how I wanted this to go and all
Did
this
they
sort
give
of
you a
thing.
time frame?
They were like, just don't make it more than 10 minutes.
Oh,
So
gosh.
that was the only thing that I had. And so I was like, okay. And like I was ready and like I had done the rehearsing, if you will, because you don't want to just be reading from a book all the time and trying to
Right.
get the cadence right and all this sort of thing. But then all of that preparation kind of amounted to that morning. And it was like, oh my God, it's actually going to happen. Like, don't screw it up. And it wasn't, I didn't care. Like, I didn't care that I was delivering a speech in front of 80 people. It was more, I just wanted it to be good for them
Yeah.
and their family. And I decided at the end of that I would never do it again because it was by far the most stressed I think I've been in my life. So yeah, that's all
Oh,
true.
but did you get ordained to do this job?
I
Like,
did, like
so
on the
you
internet.
could,
I
you may
paid
be
I
called
paid
upon.
$29. Yeah, filled out like 4 questions. It took 5 minutes, and it just yeah, it raised a lot more questions about the whole institute of marriage in my mind. But we're not going to talk about that today.
Fine. That's fine. Fine. I mean, I just loved, seeing the softer side of this, pro driver that actually says, no, I was really nervous in this
Yeah,
completely unknown arena.
for
Um,
sure, for sure.
so thanks for sharing. I really, obviously, we're taping this ahead of the Formula One race in Vegas, and I definitely want to focus on F1. If you're okay with that, I know obviously in your own podcast, you guys talk about all different NASCAR, Indy, Formula One, and I kind of just am curious to hear your thoughts on where racing is in America right now, just in the cultural landscape. And is F1 racing different from NASCAR, from Indy, or is racing in the US? And, this is all one thing that we're in together, and it's different than it was 20 years ago. What's your sense of it?
So that's a very good question, and one I think everyone in the space is trying to figure out. So if you had asked me that question, I don't know, 9 years ago, 8 years ago, when I was an American trying to get into F1 and was on the cusp of it for quite a few years and trying to get all the stars aligned to make that happen, I would have been one that said, car culture is changing. Kids these days at that time, in 2015, that's not kids today, but from that kind of point all the way till present day, you talk to a lot of these kids and it's like they're not as interested in getting their driver's license right at 16 as I was and my friends were. There's been a lot of transportation evolutions in the sense that they don't necessarily have to have their license to get from point A to point B. And certainly the environmental impact and the ideology of what cars do to the environment, that has changed amongst younger kids. So I would have said that, yeah, the car culture is kind of 28 years old and up. And ultimately it's just getting older, and it's not, the new blood and interest into cars isn't really there. I think if you fast forward to present day and you look at motorsports specifically, I think what Formula One was able to do that not a lot of other series have done through the aid of Drive to Survive and Netflix is they created some form of kind of sex appeal and relatability to motorsports. It's very easy to watch, we're in football season right now. It's very easy to watch a football game and watch what Joe Burrow does and realize that's very, very challenging. You can go pick up a football and be like, I couldn't do that.
Can't do that. Yeah.
You can't watch a race, whether it's NASCAR, IndyCar, F1 or whatever, and get into that car and realize what the people that you're watching are doing is very challenging. There's these people that's like, oh, I have a Corvette and I've driven 170 miles an hour before and I do all these things. And it's like, how hard can it be? And that's an understandable reaction because how on earth are they supposed to know? But I think what Drive to Survive did, especially in the US market, is it created this interest around the sport and the interest in the human element of it, the politics of it, the business side of racing, which us as race car drivers hate, but ultimately it is a business. And so I think that really generated this kind of pop culture opinion of what Formula One is. Now, are these fans that actually love racing and love the sport and love cars? Maybe not, but certainly some of them are now introduced to the sport. And I would say, especially driving for Arrow McLaren the past 2 years, so the McLaren F1 side in IndyCar, the amount of people that came to IndyCar races because they were introduced to Drive to Survive and Formula One was like exponential. Like I would say 60% of the young fans that came to us wearing papaya or whatever were introduced to us via Formula One. And so in a lot of respects, even though it's our biggest competition in terms of us competing against them in the US market to get eyeballs and that sort of thing, it's also a completely different championship. Like we appeal to a different demographic. And I think now...
What's the difference in demographics? Give us a sense of...
I think Formula One is marketed as a more elite event. It is harder to get access. The ticket prices are much higher. The venues are more global. When you think, even if you look at US cities, like they're destination cities, Las Vegas, Miami, maybe not Austin, but from a tech side it is. Whereas IndyCar, we go to right. IndyCar, we go to like outside of Des Moines, Iowa, and outside of Columbus, Ohio, just to give some examples. Like, yes, we go to Long Beach, we go to Tampa, we go to Toronto, but like a lot of our races are kind of in the Midwest. And so what we have to offer that maybe we don't have from a beautification standpoint is you have the access to the drivers, to the teams, to the cars at a much more cost-effective price. And ultimately, it's a different experience. IndyCar really markets to bring your family out, come camping, experience a 3-day event. Formula One is, if you have the means or your company bought a suite, like come do this and rub shoulders with celebrities and that sort of thing. So it's to each their own, right? Some there's pros and cons to both. But I think what we've seen is IndyCar, to kind of sum up your original question, is we've definitely seen a benefit of Formula One's rise in popularity. And for me, it's given me a little bit of faith that this next generation of people are going to become car people and do like cars and do like seeing things go fast, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a really good question or point. And, it kind of brings up the question to me. You mentioned, maybe some of these people coming to races really aren't car people or into cars or really actually into racing at all. And I wonder if that's even a bad thing. Like, is it even
I
a
don't think
bad
so.
thing that people are going to be in Vegas mostly to be seen, to see and be seen? And like honestly, the race feels like an afterthought for, half the people here. Is that wrong?
I don't think so at all. I mean, that's why IndyCar, at quite a few of our events, we have big concerts with big music lineup because we're trying. If you, let's say, you have an attendance of 100,000 people, right, in 2023, 2024, and you bring Post Malone in 2025, and 40,000 people come for Post Malone. If 20% of those people come back for the race and they're like, oh my God, that was actually pretty cool. Like I came for the concert, stay for the race. I like the race. That was a success, right? It's why for the Indy 500, we have one of the largest EDM festivals inside of Turn 3 during the race at the Indy 500. Those 70,000 people that are there for one thing and one thing only. But if at one point when they reach their late 20s, early 30s or whatever, and they're not going to go to an EDM festival anymore, and they want to bring their significant other, their kids or whatever, they're going to be like, hey, I came to this as a kid or a young adult. I'm now going to bring my family back to the Indy 500. And then the cycle repeats as their kid gets older and everything. So that's what those things are trying to accomplish. So no, I don't think it's a bad thing at all.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, you've been on both sides. Do you think that like internally the business culture in Indy needs to be the same as internally what the business culture at F1 is today? I mean, I know there's discussions about Indy needs to modernize, whatever that means. What's your take on that, having seen both?
I don't know that the business culture needs to change, and I don't know that it will from a standpoint of if you look at the budgets of an IndyCar team versus an F1 team, an F1 team is 10x, even with the salary caps or the budget caps that exist. And so when you have that large of a spend and you have manufacturers involved, there's always going to be this motivation that comes from the team principals and the series and everything to keep boards happy, right? Ultimately, IndyCar doesn't really have board members that they need to appease, and they don't have end of year budget reviews that they need to hit. Like the majority of the team owners in IndyCar were previous racers, right? They're doing this because they're passionate about the sport. They love the sport. If they can make money doing it, cool. They're not doing it to make money. They've already made their money in other ways of life, right? So I think where IndyCar really needs to improve is not really so much on, the overall way that the sport works from the business side, but from a marketing perspective. We really fall short of everything outside of the Indy 500. And that's understandable. The Indy 500 is the largest motorsport race on earth. It's what ultimately keeps our series alive. The problem is when you mention IndyCar to someone, even if they know what it is, they don't know that we have 16 other races, right?
No.
And so that is where our biggest downfall is, because people think the Indy 500, they know it's Memorial Day, it's got date equity, there's a lot of tradition that goes into that, but then they have no idea what we do before or after that. And I think that's where we really need to work on growing our fan base and our audience.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know your path started with karting. Does America have a clear path for young kids toward Indy? I mean, I guess it does even more than Formula One.
Yeah, to get to F1 from the States is virtually impossible. I mean, that's why I moved over there.
About. Yeah.
Logan Sargent, who is the most recent guy, he was over there for almost the better part of a decade. To get to Formula One, you have to kind of embrace and immerse yourself into the European culture. It's just the way that Americans are viewed over there, and ultimately, it's a European sport, right? So you can't commute from the States and think you're going to be as effective as someone that lives there. IndyCar does a very good job of having what's called the Road to Indy, and it's ultimately a scholarship-based ladder system that kind of gets kids into their first car championship out of go-karts. And the winner of that, gets a scholarship to go to the next level, and then the next level. And then eventually, if they win what's called Indy Next, which is like the college football, then the college football, the SEC to the NFL, they get, I think it's $1.5 million to take to a team to go IndyCar racing.
Wow.
So an IndyCar team has a lot of incentive for that because they're getting a talent of the future, but also they're getting some financial help to come with it. So IndyCar does a really good job of that. The problem is that, there's more than one good guy every single year, right? And so it creates, just like in all professional sports, there's this really big funnel effect that starts to happen towards the top. And it's hard to break through, but that's the name of the game. If you look at professional racing drivers, including IMSA, World Endurance Championship, Formula One, NASCAR, IndyCar, there's maybe 200, right? Whereas if you look at how many players are in the NFL, it's 3,000. So it's a very big difference.
Now, would a similar sort of feeder school system, could that ever exist in the US for Formula One, in your opinion, similar to what you just described for Indy?
No, because they would never, they being the European teams and owners and scouts and whatever, would never give the credit to you beating other Americans on American tracks. It doesn't matter if let's say we take Formula 2 cars, it's the same machinery, put it in America, do a 16 race calendar against other Americans, they'd be like, cool, who have you beaten over here? No one. Don't care. So that's why it's very hard to transition.
To me, sounds off extremely elite and elitist, but also it kind of makes sense. That's where the series originated. I understand that mentality, of course. I think a question that we often think about is how important is it for an American driver to break into and really see some podium time in Formula One, like for the sport to excel in the US? Is that a false dichotomy to you?
I don't think it is, because for the longest time, I was a firm believer of the fact that if there was an American representation, regardless of the results, that because the number one nation that all of these manufacturers sell cars in, minus Alpine, is the United States, right? In my mind, that would be a huge marketing opportunity for all of those manufacturers to have an American driver in the United States.
Yes.
And so, yes, there needs to be an American that's not only in it, but an American that's very successful as well.
Tell me what makes a good driver. And are good drivers born or created? And what's the balance? I know it's probably a little bit.
I think it's a little bit of both, right? You have to have some innate level of skill, but also you have to continue developing it and getting better, because you're never going to be perfect, right? And there's always people that are younger, faster, more committed. I don't know how you want to, but there's always someone chasing you, right? So I think in order to be successful in motorsports specifically, you have to be very type A personality oriented, because ultimately, and find a lot of competitiveness within yourself, because you lose so much more than you win. If you look at a sports team and you think of them having a 500 season, you're like, it's pretty average, right? You're not going to find any race car driver outside of some specific instances in Formula One where you're winning half the races you're doing. So you have to be kind of motivated by losses, and perfection doesn't exist in racing. You can always, even if you win a race, even if you're on pole, you can look back at the weekend and be like, there was these laps and these corners that weren't ever quite right. And it's because you're kind of blending human and machine, and to find that perfect balance is never going to be there. So I think to win in racing and to be good at it, you just have to have it consume you, and you have to be okay with losing a lot and just trying to chase perfection that doesn't exist.
What do you think the key to your success and your longevity has been? I mean, for you specifically, what's your magic that you have?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was fortunate to get my career going because I had huge parental support. I was an only child. And so my parents were able to really put everything behind kind of my dreams and passions that I had as a kid. So that really gave me kind of the runway and the launch pad to do what I wanted. And then beyond that, I mean, obviously it's results based. So I've been quick enough for this period of time to have a job. But then also, if you look at being a race car driver as if you look at a year as 365 days, you're in the race car maybe 50 days a year. And so the other time is what you're actually paid to do. You know, Scott Dixon, IndyCar champion, has told me this when I kind of first started in IndyCar, and it sums it up perfectly. He's like, Chip pays me to do all of the stuff outside the car, and I drive the car for free. And so all of the partner commitments, the media obligations, the marketing opportunities, the travel for sponsors and events and meet and greets and that sort of thing, like that's as much of the job as it is to get in the race car on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and go beat the guy next to you. So I think that you got to have kind of the whole package in a lot of ways from a marketability standpoint, because ultimately these sponsors that are writing these checks for you to go drive race cars need to have some way to kind of get some benefit out of it, whether that's purely an ROI from eyeballs on TV, or it's B2B opportunities, or it's using you for customer experiences, employee appreciation, stuff like that.
Do you feel like the elder statesman? I mean,
not yet.
You're 33,
not yet.
right? Okay, I was gonna say I mean, it's like that's so young still.
But not really.
You've done this right. You've been around.
Yeah. I mean, if you look, I was lucky to start it, I mean, professionally at 17, right? So it has been a while, but ultimately, the runway of all athletes is short, you know, in your career lifespan. I would say racing is actually probably one of the longest ones, because you start at 18, 19, and in a lot of respects, you can go to 43, 44, 45. So yes, as much as
level.
That's true, right? But it's much more common in racing. So I think that while I'm kind of in this interesting phase where, like, I have a lot to bring to a team with a lot of experience, in the sense that I've been doing this for a long time, but also, like you mentioned at the beginning of this, you know, signing with ECR, and they have new ownership group coming in, and they're kind of changing who they are as a team and their identity. There's a lot of opportunity there that I see way beyond kind of 3, 4, 5 years that I want to be a part of, because they're going to grow into a team that now can compete with the Penske's and the Ganassis and the Andretti's of the world. So yes, I'm on the backside of it, but like I still view myself as having, you know, a solid 10 years left. So that's the plan.
I was going to say, surely you're planning you can do this past 40. I'm guessing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But then it's like, do you really want to do it past 40? Like, probably not.
I mean, is your body
hard on the old body? Does
your body feel different than it did when you were 23? Like, can you physically tell my body is different?
No, not in the car. I think from the training aspect of it, you know, there's a lot more that I have to do and think about, from like injury prevention, and there's a lot more mobility and flexibility work that comes into it, because, you know, driving a race car, there's a huge demand on kind of the strength side of it, especially IndyCar, because there's no power steering. You know, the G loads are very high. We race in summer months, so you can lose 5-6 pounds in a race. You know, the cardio aspect of it's important, but really from the strength side, I've had to really, you know, adjust the training program a little bit to be able to keep the same level of intensity. So like my life now, I do Pilates, and I do things that I never would.
Me too.
I saw people do it and would make fun of them. I'm like, why are you doing that? That's a waste of time. Now I'm that guy. I do a lot more massage work, like I do chiropractic work. So it's a lot more stuff just to keep training at that level. But other than that, if I do all those things, and in the car now, it's the same as when I was 21.
Now, are you one of these drivers that does really weird, like not weird, but sort of fringy things, like where when cryo used to be like, really
Mm.
obscure and weird, were you doing cryo? Do you have like something super obscure that you actually believe helps you physically
I
or,
I don't
nutrition?
think so.
Okay.
No.
There's no weird life hack that you can share with us that you
I
secretly do.
no. Like I do the normal things. Like you watch what you eat, but like you still enjoy what you eat. No, I haven't really like I did the cryo thing for a little bit and that was a waste of time.
Okay, that's good because I've not done
Not that I
it
can
and
think of.
I don't really want to.
Mm.
So good.
Yeah, yeah.
Check.
No.
On to the next. So tell me a little bit just about the Vegas race. Just your did you go to the race last year?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So just final thoughts on Vegas in terms of like how this race can grow and doesn't need to. And as a driver, what do the drivers say about the track? Give us some insider perspectives on
Yeah.
that.
So first of all, I think everyone loved the track. Um, I actually got to do hot laps for McLaren, so I got to drive it a little bit. Like it's an amazing track. The setting is obviously second to none. The strip at night is phenomenal. I thought the event was perfect from an execution standpoint. I thought the experience, like I spent quite a bit of time like outside the paddock and grandstands and the fan zone and kind of walking around. Um, I think the experience was so good because admittedly they were expecting a lot more people to come last year. So in terms of the staffing that existed, it
It was
was
like
a lot of staff for not many
two
people.
staff to each fan.
Exactly, exactly.
Awesome.
So from the flow of the event, I thought it was amazing. Um, the time is terrible. Like I'm really surprised,
You mean
especially
for
with
fans or TV watchers or ever
all of the
drivers?
above. Unless you're in Europe, it's terrible. Like the schedule and when they're doing these on-track sessions is horrible. So I'm really surprised because there was a lot of complaints from the team's drivers and then also the city about, you know, the city is impacted because that's the prime time when people are going to dinner,
Of course.
then they're going to go to the casino, right? If they come from the racetrack and they're done at 10:30, 11 o'clock, they're not spending money at dinner. They might go to the casino, probably not. They're going to go to bed. And then when they wake up at 9 a.m., what are they going to do? Not do any of the things you want people to do in Vegas, right?
Right.
So it was kind of surreal from that standpoint. And that just goes back to kind of our conversation 15 minutes ago. Formula One is European centric. They don't really care about the American experience as much as they care about their fan base in Europe being able to watch it at their normal time. So I do think that that'll shift at some point, and I would say that that's the biggest thing that needs to change, just to get more people interested in going. Because for me, like it is the perfect Vegas weekend. If you go for a couple days with your buddies, you watch a race at 2 p.m. on Sunday, right? You are done by 5. You're watching NFL games, right? You can watch Sunday night football, go to dinner, go to the casino, have a night, right? As it is now, you're kind of just hanging around all day. A lot of people that I heard of that were there as guests of some companies, like had too many extracurricular activities leading up to the race, didn't even go to the race. And it's like, it's missing the mark a little bit from that standpoint.
So that was Alex Rossi, and he's so interesting to talk to. At this point, I remember talking to him 10 years ago, and he really has developed as a thinker. And like you said, he's not the elder statesman yet of IndyCar. He's only 33, but he's been doing this for so long. I just love getting his perspective on the world of racing because he shoots it straight.
Very cool. All right, what else have you got coming up? What are you doing after this?
So Vegas until Sunday, the Grand Prix is on Saturday night. And then, next week's Thanksgiving, and we are not going anywhere. We are staying put. I might, get some Chinese food.
Sweet.
What about you?
It's the first time, so I'm not going home for Thanksgiving, and hopefully my mom doesn't listen to this podcast because she's very unhappy about it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I'm
Why aren't you
happy.
going home?
I'm happy.
You want to get into it or no?
Because
Okay,
no, because I've traveled a lot. I've gone home. It's expensive when you have all of a sudden you're paying for not 1 or 2 plane tickets, but 4. And also, I bought my house with my family to live in it. Like, I'm going to set up a fire. I'm going to put the turkey in the oven. I'm going to do the whole deal, so.
I'm a big believer in establishing your own traditions as an adult. And I understand, and sorry, my mom does listen to this. I certainly understand that you never want to hurt your family, but some things you do might hurt their feelings. But at the end of the day, you're the adult. You've got your own family. It doesn't mean you don't love them. And maybe you'll see them next year.
Yeah, no, I definitely will. And I'm glad your mom listens to this podcast. Hi,
Me
Mom.
too. Hi.
Awesome. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. I hope you have a fantastic week. I am going to be thankful for you, and I'm thankful that we are doing this together. It's really at the top of my list. So, and to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for coming along on this journey with me and Hannah.
Yes. We truly enjoy all of the feedback.
Shoot us an email at hotpursuit@bloomberg.net. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.